Like many older motors, Triumphs have a bit of a bad reputation when it comes to overheating, and we may have just compounded that problem slightly by actually converting it to unleaded fuel, because modern fuels tend to make older cars run a little bit hotter. Now, at the moment, there is no antifreeze in the engine, but to fix the problem, rather than put in a conventional water-based coolant, I'm actually going to put in a revolutionary new liquid. Now, even though pretty much every vehicle on the planet uses some kind of water and antifreeze mix, there are inherent problems with using water as a basis for your coolant. One of them is corrosion. Now, you have a look at this little water pump out of a Mini. You can see it doesn't look actually that old, but it is covered in rust. And that's actually part of the job of the antifreeze. Obviously, it helps to lower the freezing point, slightly raise the boiling point of the water, but also it's loads of inhibitors in there to stop corrosion. And I bet you, if I have a little look at our expansion bottle, now, if we have a look at the contents of this, there we go. Look at that. So we've basically got kind of liquid rust here, and that's really our engine being dissolved away, which is pretty mad. So we'll just pour it back the other way. You might find some sludge, which is further evidence of another problem. If you leave a water antifreeze mix long enough, it'll actually separate. The inhibitors will fall out of the water, and then that water is then free to cause even more corrosion damage. And worse still, in a difficult winter, it can actually freeze. And there you go, you can see all these little particles and all that sludge.
Even more, at 100 degrees, water boils and pressure in the system will have built up. So even though it's readily available, water certainly isn't the best stuff to cool your engine. I'm going to install a coolant which doesn't have any water in it at all. But before it can go into the engine, I'm going to need to purge the system of old coolant, dirt and scale. In addition to compressed air, I'm also going to be using this prep fluid, which will circulate around the engine and, like a liquid sponge, remove all traces of H2O. I need to run the engine up to temperature. Once the thermostat is open, the fluid is drawn into every part of the cooling system. When I'm satisfied the water has been completely ingested, and this could be after as long as a week, I can drain the system and, for good measure, use compressed air again to make sure the purging is complete. And one aspect of this prep fluid I like is that you can filter it and reuse it another time. The waterless coolant itself will last the lifetime of the engine.
Finally, it's time to put in our waterless coolant. Now, just think about water for a minute. It freezes at 0 degrees and it boils at 100 degrees. And when you add those standard coolant additives, you can push those boundaries a little bit. But this stuff at minus 40 degrees will actually still behave rather like a slushy, so it will flow around the engine. But also, it doesn't boil until 180 degrees, which is way, way above anything your engine's going to be running at. So we can drive our Triumph to somewhere as cold as the North Pole or as hot as the Sahara, and it's still going to be fine.
So now the waterless coolant can be added to the engine. The downside of all these benefits is that to replace your engine's coolant will be around £90, compared to, say, £20 of standard water-based stuff. But that would have to be replaced after 2 years, and our waterless coolant is for life.
Our Triumph has been running for quite some time now, so it's definitely up to temperature. Now, if you think about what that actually means for a water-based coolant, the water would have got hot, it would have expanded, and therefore the whole system would then be under pressure. Now, if you were to release that pressure, you'd end up with that water then turning into steam. There'd be scalding water absolutely everywhere, which would mean you could never, ever do this. Look at that. I've removed the radiator cap, and because we have no water with our waterless coolant, there's no pressure, and therefore there's no explosive mess when I remove that cap. What more proof do you need? There is no water in our system. Brilliant.